Men and women all over the globe are joining now for the best videos on the internet.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
And I'm doing my part too.
They're doing their part. Are you? Click the subscribe button now to become a member of the Action Pack. Would you like to know more?
Hello everyone and welcome. In 2018, Marvel Spider-Man was released on the PlayStation 4 and it rocked the video game industry to its core. I really love the game and I did a review of it, which you should be seeing a link for up in the corner. Click that, go check it out. It was followed up by a spin-off, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, which was much shorter, and it added some new features and things, and I did like it. I didn't think it was as good as the original, but I also did a review of that one, and you should be seeing another link for that one up in the corner. If I'm pointing at nothing and the links aren't appearing, go check them out. They're on my channel, guys, under Game Review playlist. But it begs the question, where do we go from here? Well, how about continuing the story, developing the characters further, adding some new features, and bringing in a very, very iconic villain. I'm Mike, and this is Mike's After Action Reviews, and this is the After Action Review for Marvel Spider-Man 2.
I have the power of purple, with Purple Works Nutrition.
Mike's After Action Reviews is proud to partner with Purple Works Nutrition. If you want to get jacked like my man Samson over here, go check them out at purpleworksnutrition.com. Use the promo code MIKE at checkout and you get 15% off. Starting off with the game's production. It was initially released on October 20th, 2023 to the PlayStation 5. Marvel Spider-Man 2 was developed by Insomniac Games, which is most well known for Marvel Spider-Man from 2018 and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in 2021. It was published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, which is most well known for The Last of Us Part 2 in 2020, and is also known for Horizon Call of the Mountain, which came out earlier in 2023. The music for the game was by John Paisano, which is most well known for The Maze Runner in 2014, and also is working on Invincible, the TV series on Amazon from 2021, and a new season is being released currently as I am recording this video. So, moving on to the game's story. We return to New York City, where Spider-Man and Miles Morales have now teamed up as the crime-fighting duo known as the Spider-Men. Everything seems to be going well as Peter and MJ are working to build a life together. Miles is dealing with college admissions, and Harry Osborn returns after the successful treatment of a debilitating disease. Things take a turn, though, as a new villain comes to New York City to challenge Spider-Man and Miles, and the secrets behind Harry's treatment are revealed. According to HowLongToBeat.com, the main story will take around 16 hours to complete, and to 100% complete the game will take 26 and a half hours. The game takes place 10 months after Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales and about 2 years after the first game. This time around, you play as both Miles and Spider-Man, switching between them at will when in the open world, but with each story mission being assigned to one of the duo. This is where we run into our first criticism. The tagline of the game is, "Be greater together." This is an interesting choice of words considering the story structure. There are 32 missions in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Miles only appears in 16 of them, with Spider-Man being present in 24 of the missions. Of the 16 missions that Miles appears in, only 6 of them are his missions. In the others, he shows up for a short portion to help Spider-Man or MJ with what they are doing, and then they are the main characters. Without spoiling anything, I will tell you the basic content of these missions, these 6 missions that are Miles' missions, so that you can get a feel for Miles' role in the story of this game. The first of Miles' missions sees him reunite with his uncle, the Prowler. This opens up the Prowler stashes in the open world. The second mission sees you help Black Cat. This mission has no real effect on the story, and you never see Black Cat again throughout the game's runtime. For the third solo outing, you follow Miles as he enters a Mysterium to experience futuristic virtual reality. This I actually thought was really cool, by the way, so this is not a criticism of this particular mission. This is because I did think this was really awesome. But what this mission actually amounts to is basically that after this mission, Mysteriums will be available in the open world as a side activity. Miles attempts to stop a museum robbery in his next solo outing, but some of the thieves escape. This opens up the Cultural Museum side missions. On his 5th solo mission, Miles discovers a drone flying around the city. After destroying it, destroying drones will be available as a side activity in the open world. Finally, in his last solo mission, Miles was captured by a villain and must now escape. This is the only solo mission of Miles in the game that has anything to do with the main story and is not designed to open up any side content. Miles is relegated to being a side character in this game, which is disappointing. I reviewed Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, and while I didn't like it as much as the first game because of its short length and high price point, I think that the character of Miles Morales has great potential. The character's potential can't be realized if he is kept in the shadow of Spider-Man. This is also why I think that the comic book creators of Miles have made a mistake by not giving him his own superhero name and identity. Spider-Man isn't a rank in the superhero world. It's the name of Peter Parker's superhero alter ego. Calling Miles Kid Arachnid or Spin, like in some of the comic books, would be allowing him to be his own hero. As I said though, this is a comic issue and not so much an issue with Insomniac Games storytelling. In fact, I've actually heard that Marvel and the MCU and all of that, they have a great controlling interest in any properties that use any of their characters, so Marvel probably mandated some of the things that are in the story. They probably were very, very present when making this story, just letting you guys know that. So, this brings us to another issue with the game though. Cringy dialogue between Miles and Peter. During every interaction between these two characters, the way that they talk to each other breaks immersion. Both Miles and Peter refer to each other as Spider-Man repeatedly during conversation. This is odd because they are only talking to each other, so using names would be unnecessary anyway. And it becomes obvious that the developers are really trying to push into your mind that Miles is Spider-Man while Peter is also Spider-Man simultaneously. This is actually a grammar error, and I don't think that it would happen in reality. If these characters were brought into the real world, people would call them two different things because they would need to in order to differentiate them from each other. If you don't believe me about this, characters within the game do this when talking about both Peter and Miles at the same time by calling Miles Spidey Jr. or the smaller one or the new guy or whatever. Okay? Multiple characters do this throughout the game's runtime. Okay? I know that some people feel very strongly about this issue with the Miles Morales character, and those feelings may differ from my own. So please, guys, leave a comment down below, and we can talk about it there in the comment section. I do not censor any I do not censor any comments, but try to be respectful and avoid using foul language or anything like that. If you do feel strongly about something, I will leave those comments up, but just I ask for courtesy. So, aside from those criticisms though, the story itself does follow the same vein as the first and serves as a well-made continuation of the first game. The character development between Harry, MJ, and Peter is well done, although I was disappointed that we did not get much of that between Peter and Miles. There are not quite as many supervillains as in the first, but we do get a good variety here, including the Lizard Man, Sandman, and most interestingly, Venom. There are a few things to mention before moving on. There were some decisions made in the game that, while not necessarily bad, made it weaker than its predecessor. First off, the game puts much more emphasis on the main story than the first. This is shown not only by the fact that there is almost twice as much side content in the first game, but also by the fact that on the first go-around, there were times when the story missions would not be available for certain periods of time. This acted as a break for players to explore the city, enjoy the excellent traversal mechanics, and complete side content, while this time around, each of the missions lead directly into the setup for the next mission, and it makes it feel like the game is nudging you forward in the story rather than happily giving you the choice to continue on or go explore New York City. Secondly, and I know this is going to be controversial, but I don't care. I don't care about the controversy, especially political stuff. I just am honest. Where are the cops? Or even at times the army? Because realistically, you need them here every once in a while in the story. In the first game and in this game, the army was needed, okay? In the first game, Spider-Man has a great working relationship with the police and basically has his own personal liaison in the police department. Narratively, it makes no sense for that relationship to just disappear between games, and I would also add that him having his own personal liaison made a lot of sense and would make sense here, narratively as well. What do you think that Spider-Man does with the criminals that he stops? And would it not be beneficial and potentially life-saving to coordinate with the police to stop things like the terrorist attacks that happen in this game? Okay? I know that there is a clashing of cultural narratives around police at the time that I am making this video, but one, this is a fantasy world where things like that would not necessarily be an issue. And two, grow up, guys. Law enforcement is needed if you do not want lawlessness. If supervillains were real, you wouldn't be calling for defunding the police. You would be asking for more funding so they could afford equipment that can take down super strong beings like the Rhino and Kraven. Speaking of taking down supervillains, let's talk about the game's core gameplay mechanic: combat. Being that this is a direct sequel, I will be comparing it to its predecessors. So the question is, does it stand up when compared to the series so far? The answer is yes and no. Marvel Spider-Man 2's combat system is a replica of Marvel Spider-Man's, but with some slight variations that have large effects on the game. Just like the first game, you can use combos, zip to enemies, perform QTE strikes, and dodge almost all attacks following the dodge indicator above your head. But now let's talk about what the game does differently. You can now block. This is a great variation to the core combat system and creates an interesting challenge, particularly in boss fights. Basic attacks can be either dodged or parried, while heavy attacks, shown by a yellow indicator, must be blocked, and crush attacks, shown by a blue indicator, must be dodged. If timed correctly, you can counterattack an enemy by hitting the block button, just as the color indicator turns red. The other variation made to combat in the game is one that I have mixed feelings about. This game includes special abilities for both Miles and Spider-Man. This is something that was introduced in the Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales game, with Miles being able to use an electric punch attack known as Venom to deal massive damage to enemies. I want to point out here, by the way, that I think it was a very stupid mistake to name a superhero's keynote power that differentiates him from another superhero that's very similar to him after one of the most, if not the most, iconic villains of that superhero. Imagine if Captain America could shoot lasers from his eyes and this ability was called Red Skull Beams. This is almost as confusing as introducing a new superhero with an almost identical power set and costume as an already established hero, and then not differentiating them by giving the new hero his own name. I still do realize that these issues are with the comic book creators and not Insomniac Games. But I digress. Your combat abilities are activated by holding L1 and pressing one of the action buttons: square, triangle, circle, or X. These abilities do heavy damage enemies in an area, throw enemies into the air, close the gap between you and an enemy, or some combination thereof. Both Spider-Man and Miles also have an ultimate ability that is tied to a meter that fills up as combat progresses. The problem with these abilities is that, because of the way they are implemented, they break the rhythm of combat. You see, in Miles Morales, the Venom attack is tied to your focus meter that is built up by attacking and dodging. But here the abilities are on a cooldown and you can have 4 of them active at a time. There are even passive abilities that reduce the cooldown of your combat abilities. This means that while you're not exactly spamming combat abilities, you are not relying on the tried and true combat rhythm of dodging, attacking, and using gadgets and combos to take down enemies that we fell in love with in both the 2018 Spider-Man game and the Arkham game series. The real issue here is that the addition of these abilities means that the threat of enemies must be scaled up to balance combat by either increasing the number of enemies per combat encounter or by increasing their effectiveness at killing you. This makes it so that not using abilities, which is what most people would recommend to someone who does not like them, becomes much less viable due to the power of your adversaries. Speaking of gadgets, they are less prevalent here. In the first game, there are 8 gadgets. Here, there are 5. The web shooters, the upshot, the web grabber, the concussion burst, and the ricochet web. The biggest difference here is the exclusion of the stealth-centric trip mine and the spider drone. The director of the game has said in an IGN interview that the gadgets were dialed down intentionally to reduce the feeling of being overpowered. I appreciate this sentiment, but why then did you give both characters 4 combat abilities that are tied to a cooldown rather than, like in previous entries, being tied to a meter? Having combat abilities tied to a meter would limit how often they can be used and preserve the feeling that combat had in the first 2 entries in the series. Being able to use 4 abilities in quick succession breaks the rhythm of combat and makes you feel overpowered, rendering the adjustments to gadgets pointless. The last thing to mention about combat is that while I really love the stealth combat system that has been showcased by the series so far, I was disappointed that it wasn't used more this time around. There are far fewer stealth sections of this game than in either Spider-Man or a Spider-Man Miles Morales. This is not game-breaking by any means, but it would have been cool to see Insomniac Games not only give us more stealth, but also expand upon its features. So, moving on to the game's special features. We will start off with the greatest feature of these games so far: the extremely well done web swinging. Much like most of the other mechanics featured in this game, web swinging remains a much appreciated carryover from the other games, but having some additions to the formula. Now, I highly praised Insomniac's handling of web swinging in the first game, and I still stand by those praises, but where I think that they made a misstep is adding a mechanic that, much like the combat abilities, was unneeded and breaks the established rhythm. This mechanic is, of course, web wings. Web wings allow you to glide through the city and even follow air currents to increase your glide's speed and longevity. Jim, would you explain to our audience why this is an issue?
Well, I kind of feel like what we have going for us is
web swinging.
And no matter how much we change this up, I don't know that
web wings
it's going to be able to replace that.
Specifically, the web wings are the fastest way to travel in the game and actually serve as a replacement to the web swinging. Now, just like the new combat features in the game, you might say, well, just don't use the web wings. But the problem with this is that it creates a conundrum in the player's mind. Web swinging is more fun, but the web wings are so much faster. I don't think that the web wings break the game or anything like that, but their implementation is disappointing because it could have been done better by limiting their use. Reworking the way slipstreams are implemented and greatly decreasing the airtime of gliding overall would stop it from replacing web swinging, but also keep the web wings an interesting addition to the traversal elements of the game. The traversal elements would be nothing without a place to use them. The game takes place in a fictionalized version of New York City, with a wide variety of side activities to complete, including random crime, combat encounters, finding different collectibles scattered around the map, and doing science experiments throughout the city, just to name a few. These side activities and missions give tokens upon completion. These tokens are used to upgrade gadgets, purchase new suits and different color schemes for those suits, for Miles and Spider-Man, and progress your suit tech, which I will talk about in a minute. Completing open world activities also unlocks fast travel for the area that you completed them in. All of these open world features, by the way, are very, very similar to what we had in the original game and in Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. One cool feature that has been added to the open world is that when you fight enemies in the open world as Spider-Man, there is a chance that Miles Morales will appear to help you, and also vice versa. Peter's scientific skills are displayed in this game through the previously mentioned science experiments in the form of 2 different puzzles, while augmenting the structure of different molecules. This is also showcased through your gadgets and, most interestingly, the Arkham-esque scanning ability. Scanning ability can be used to find objectives in the open world and is required to find hidden objects during the story or side missions. Scanning is not as interesting here as it was in the Arkham series, but it is solidly implemented. So, now to the progression system. Playing as both Miles and Spider-Man means that the progression system had to be done a little differently than in the past. There are 3 progression skill trees. 1 for Miles, 1 for Spider-Man, and 1 that is a shared tree. The shared tree covers your traversal mechanics, your web shooter related attacks, and passive abilities that help in combat. Miles' skill tree increases the power of his venom attacks, while Spider-Man's skill tree increases the effectiveness of his mechanical arms and, later, some abilities he gets that I won't go into to avoid spoilers. You don't gain experience directly through combat, but instead level up and gain skill points by completing missions or doing open world activities that then award experience. Aside from your skill trees, there are your gadgets and suit tech. These are upgraded using tokens that are awarded for completing missions and open world activities. You cannot max your gadgets or suit tech through the story alone. This is a nice way to encourage players to explore the open world. Gadgets can be upgraded to increase their effectiveness, such as the web shooters being able to fire more shots, or to alter their mechanics, like the web grabber being upgraded to not only pull in groups of enemies, but also throwable objects that will damage said enemies. Progression of the suit tech is a bit more straightforward, with there being 4 branches to the tree: health, damage, focus, and traversal. Along with increasing your base stats, perks are gained as you progress down each of the 4 branches. These perks include things like slightly healing when executing a perfect dodge, automatically marking enemies when they are detected with your scanner, or increasing focus gained by dodging and attacking. Perks on the progression tree come in pairs, with you choosing one or the other as you unlock them, but they can be switched at any time. Before we move into our final statement and review score, here is a message from one of our advertising partners. The Action Pack needs you. You can support Mike's After Action Reviews on our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Every quarter, once we've made at least $200, we're going to be giving away 10% of our earnings from Patreon in a giveaway over on our Twitch, so go check that out as well. You can find all of the links for everything in the description and in the pinned comment down below. Do your part. Support the pack. The Action Pack. Okay guys, so we're going to start with the sustains. So, my first sustain, everything brought forward from the first game. The web swinging, the city and open world, the core of the combat system. Okay? I say core specifically because we'll get into some things that I wanted improved about this, but basically I know that some people don't like it, but I really like those basically Arkham style fighting systems where you just have enemies coming in and you can dodge and block, and it actually becomes very cinematic as you're trying to, press the block button and parry and dodge and all the stuff at the right time, and you see your character moving around and doing some cool attacks. I really like that. The web swinging is kind of the keynote feature here. And then, of course, like I said, the open world, just the graphics, which is more of technology progressing, but just the graphics being done so well really does complement the web swinging and the traverse elements of this game a whole lot, and it's really awesome. Okay? I do realize that there isn't a whole lot of variation from the first game, but I don't mind that so much because I really liked the first game. I liked all of the mechanics from the first game. So it didn't bother me so much to basically have a new story with very, very similar everything from the first game with some slight small variations. I didn't mind that at all. I thought this was great, okay? My second sustain is the block mechanic, okay? So this makes sense that Spider-Man can block, okay, because he just can. Like, you literally even see in the first game you don't have a block mechanic, but you actually see him block when Rhino on top of the prison, the raft, Rhino goes to punch him and he catches his fist with both hands. You see, okay, that's a block. I mean, that's what blocking is. So, all right. It also makes combat more varied and challenging, especially in the boss fights with different ways of, dodging or blocking different enemies' attacks. It's pretty cool. I actually, interestingly, so I consider myself to be pretty good at these, this type of combat. Like I said, I'm a real big fan of it, but my mind just kept going back to hitting the dodge button when I would need to block. So the enemies like switching back and forth between doing a block attack and a dodge attack really, really throws you off, and it makes it an interesting challenge. My third sustain is Venom. Okay, Venom is awesome. He's iconic and very interesting, and he's just a big part of the Spider-Man ethos, not ethos, but like the Spider-Man lore, and he's a really, really cool enemy, so it was really interesting to see him brought in. Some of the stuff that they did with him I didn't necessarily, not that I thought it was bad, but I just thought, I thought they would do it this way, and then they did it a little differently, and I was like, yeah, particularly with one character over another character. I'll just put it that way. People who've played the game will know what I'm talking about. I thought it was going to go one way, and instead it went another way, and I was like, oh, okay. Okay, yeah. It was okay. that particular portion. But otherwise, it would be really interesting to see moving forward what they do with Venom. I keep thinking, as soon as I saw Venom in this, I kept thinking back to, what is it? There was one, Ultimate Spider-Man, that's what it was. The Ultimate Spider-Man game, which I played on the PC when it first came out, a long time ago. I can't remember exact when it came out or any of that stuff, but like what console system we were on. But you could actually play, part of the story was played by Spider-Man, and then the other playable character was actually Venom. So it was really cool. I thought there'd be something that would be something that they could do as an offshoot of this game in the future. Hey, Insomniac Games, take all the credit, steal my idea, and I won't even come after you for it. Do this, please, so I can play that game. Being able to play as Venom would be awesome. A little twinkle in my eye for people who have played this game and are definitely seeing the potential that I see in it. Yeah. Okay, so so those are the sustains. Let's move on to the improves. We are going to get the first one out of the way here. I know that this is going to be a little bit controversial for some people. I don't care. This is one of the reasons that I started Mike's After Action Reviews. It's something that I really, really believe in. And so we're going to talk about it. The ideological insertions into the story, okay? If you, for whatever reason, compromise the narrative of a story for some stupid ideological reason that is completely wrong, like I'm a Christian, okay? I make videos. How often, other than telling you that I am a Christian, how often do I rate games, rate movies, review stuff, and tell you, oh, this is bad because my Christian beliefs? No, I don't do that. I talk about the strengths or weaknesses of a property or product or whatever on its merits, okay? And I will do little asides to say, like, oh, I'm a Christian and I have certain beliefs about this, but as far as, secularly, we basically try to take a secular view, not insert ourselves into the reviews here. And so I really hate the fact that a developer inserts their own ideology into a property where it doesn't belong. If this was a game about police corruption or problems in the police force, that would make sense that they would talk about those things. This is a game about a superhero who in the first game is partnered with the police, okay? So cops and law enforcement is an important part of a superhero like Spider-Man, okay? And any issues that you have with the police in the real world wouldn't have to be an issue in a world that you yourself create. So, and if you think that there are all kinds of problems with the police force and with cops, you could use your game to serve it as an example of what law enforcement should be. So even if you believed that you should implement your belief system into these things, which I do not believe, but even if you were going to do that, like basically just basing this thing, arguing in the way that the people who believe in putting their ideology into things, you've missed a serious opportunity to actually have the police force be good, okay? Like, be the good guys, have no corrupt cops, or even maybe Spider-Man can help find a dirty cop, which, by the way, I want to make it very clear that, like, Law and Order and other shows and movies all the time are about corrupt cops, and the cops that try to take them down, the non-dirty cops, the clean cops or whatever, who try to take down dirty cops, or vigilantes, like the Punisher movies, who take down dirty cops. So you could have very well implemented something in here that would have been fair, much more fair than just putting in your own ideology and screw everybody else. But it would have been fair and also pushed your own message, okay? Anyway, yeah, so kind of getting off my soapbox with that. I hate when basically the spotlight of quality and entertainment is or the spotlight for a game is taken off of the quality and entertainment, and kind of moved over and pushed a little bit into that ideological or whatever my belief system is, or self-inserting myself, or doing certain things. Like, do not compromise the entertainment value of your game. Make sure, and the way that you don't compromise the entertainment value of your game, which is the purpose of the game, is to make sure that whatever you're doing feels natural. It didn't feel natural here because it wasn't natural that Spider-Man just all of a sudden stopped working with the police. So, okay, my second improve, the implementation of the two-character story, okay? There was a huge lack of the presence of Miles in the story, okay, and also cringy dialogue that tries to emphasize that Miles and Spider-Man are both Spider-Man. This was really, basically really poorly done, guys. I've said this before. There's a big debate all the time. Look at Miles Morales is not as popular as Spider-Man. He's not. And I've heard things about what they want to do with the future of this franchise, and it's not going to do well as if they just kept Spider-Man. But Miles Morales needs to be his own hero, or you're actually insulting him. Like, Spider-Man is not a rank, okay? Being called something else, having the same, like, you're just as good of a hero as Spider-Man if you have the same abilities and are just as skilled as him, but have your own name, okay? There was also the lack of the development of Miles and Spider-Man's relationship. Okay, so basically, all of the development here is between Harry Osborn, MJ, and Peter Parker. Miles is really, I'm talking about Miles outside of the suit, other than just being another crime fighter. Miles is really not present in this at all. Miles probably should have just gotten his own sequel game so that he can have his own story. Okay. Another thing to emphasize this is that there's a huge lack of connection between Miles and the new characters in the game, okay? Miles, out of costume, only meets Harry Osborn once, and he doesn't actually sit down and, like, talk to him or do anything with him. It's just like oh, hi, how you doing? Okay? He never meets Norman Osborn, and has no connection to any of the villains except for Negative Man, and Negative Man is actually a straight-up Spider-Man villain that actually Spider-Man, and Peter Parker, his alter ego, have much more connection with because he worked with him for years. So, like, this whole idea of, and again, it falls partly on the comic book writers, but at the same time, it does fall partly on to Insomniac Games. This whole idea of writing Miles in a way that every aspect of his character is just in the shadow of some aspect of Peter Parker and Peter Parker Spider-Man is ridiculous. You need to let Miles be his own character. Otherwise, you actually are insulting him. He can do it. He has his own potential. He could be a great individual hero, much like I've talked about this with other people where I've said, like, Robin leaving, when Robin stopped being the sidekick of Batman, he didn't become Batman, okay? He became Nightwing. Why? Because Robin isn't another Batman, even though he basically is the same type of person, same type of vigilante justice. He's his own character, so why wouldn't you let Miles be his own character? Yeah, exactly. And then, when it comes to the point of maybe like Nightwing, when Batman gets old and decides to retire, maybe then Nightwing says, like, I'll take up the mantle. At that point, I don't think he would have to. I think they would just retire Batman and Nightwing would remain as, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm just saying, having a character become old or decide to retire and taking up the mantle is a different thing than having another character come up and basically trying to quasi-replace them because you both are the same character. That didn't make any sense to me. Anyway, I'm getting a little long on this. Okay, so then my third, I don't know why I said fourth. Yeah, we're on 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay, my third. Added features, okay, that watered down features that made the other games special. Okay, so you have your combat skills that are not tied to a focus meter. This really, like I said, it messes up the rhythm of combat and just makes it feel like you can you're not exactly spamming, but for lack of a better word, you are quasi spamming combat abilities and making it so that way you really feel overpowered. Which is something that, like I said, the developers have said they were trying to avoid, but actually they did exactly the thing they were fearing was going to happen. Okay, and then also web wings, they kind of serve as a replacement to web swinging. So I thought that was just, I don't know. I thought that I was like, look, your best feature that everybody loved and everybody said was so great in the original, Marvel Spider-Man was the web swinging, and then you guys said, well, in the sequel, let's replace that with something else. It's a little bit, I don't know. So guys, I'm going to tell you, look, this was really tough for me because I really loved the first game, okay? I liked the way that they implemented, the Venom attack in Spider-Man Miles Morales. I think the biggest weakness that this game has is adding in those combat abilities that are not attached to a meter, for me. So that kind of sucks. The biggest thing for me when deciding the review score of this one is that, like, the original game I thought was just excellent. And then I looked at every aspect of this game, comparing it to that. And it literally was like they took the first game, okay, made a cop. Like imagine if you took the first game and you just kind of made like a clone of it, and then you started to change some things, but everything that they changed made it just a little bit worse. So I don't think that it is terrible. I don't think that they did a horrible job, but I basically would place this one. And I know some people are gonna. You got to remember, guys. Some of this is a little bit subjective. I would say average, high average, though. High average, almost above average. The biggest thing is just that the combat was so good, and then just every time that I start to get into certain parts of the game, like enjoying certain things like the story, then the cringy dialogue comes in. As I start to enjoy the combat, then it's like, well, I can just spam these abilities and the combat is over. There's even ways of spamming the abilities when attacking bosses that makes it so you can kind of cheese the bosses, and I was like, that's kind of cheap. There were other parts of the story that I, for spoiler, avoiding spoilers, I won't really get into, but that really, really brought down the story for me and the way that certain things turned out. I really loved the first one. I was just in every aspect of this game, I was disappointed in some way. Some of those, in some of those ways it was small, it was bigger in other areas, but that's my review score, guys. I do want to thank you all for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, do all of that stuff. From the bottom of our hearts over here at Mike's After Action Reviews, we want to thank you all for watching just one last time, if I've already said it before, and just say, God bless you all, and have a good day. Don't forget to check me out on Twitch and join the Discord, where you can voice chat with me while I live stream, and you won't be recorded or anything on YouTube and Twitch, so that's pretty cool. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. If you like to read, you can see my after action reports on my blog. And if you are interested, you can get some merch from my spring store. The links for everything are in the description below.